and I pre-program my consoles before I go to a show. So I'll take the band's input list and I'll take my console patch sheet and I'll program the console so that it's doing what it needs to do, and then I just verify it on site and operate the show. And so that you have the ability to do that same thing with that document. So after you get through the inputs that you have available to you on the touch panel, then you go into the stage expanders. So you've got expander 1 and 2. So expander 1 starts here on channel 13, and it continues on through expander 2. So there's 2, because I programmed 2. There's 2 expanders, so you've got 32 channels of expanders that'll be in the system ultimately, and then you also have the analog that are on the back of the console. So there's analog inputs. So in the interim between now and when you get the stage boxes, if you needed to, you could just run an analog snake up to the stage and plug into the back of the console to get stuff going.
And there's 16 analogs on this board?
There's 32, I believe, or is it 24? There is 25. That's a weird number. Yeah, so there's 25 in and 16 out. I don't know why Soundcraft decided to do 25 instead of 24. That's,
no, it's 24.
Is it?
Yeah, 24.
Oh, it's the line inputs at the bottom there.
Yeah, 24, 16.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, those are, okay.
So you've got the inputs on the back of the console. Right now, everything's set up to be Dante. So you've got your first layer, wireless mics and wired mics coming to you through Dante, program audio, line level, all coming through Dante, expanders coming through Dante. Coming down to your next level, 46 through 62 are also coming from Dante, so that if you were to, if someone were to bring in more Dante equipment, you could route Dante to those channels and make it operate.
So the expanders, those are the stage boxes.
Stage boxes.
So you program 2 stage boxes in.
Correct. Yeah, so there's 2 stage boxes.
Okay.
Because that was correct.
Okay,
Yep.
that's fine.
And that was based off of the bill of materials,
Okay.
the spec sheet. So
And then you're saying beyond that, that is also Dante though?
Correct.
48 or whatever.
64. So the Dante chip that's in this card is 64 by 64, so it can do 64 in, 64 out.
Where do the analogs come in then? Would you have to reassign
Currently they're not assigned. You could reassign them.
Okay.
You could go into each channel and assign those on the channel itself.
I'm thinking for theater stuff, maybe we create another user, because I imagine that theater won't utilize the stage boxes a whole lot, and we would want we have 20 wireless, a rack with 20 wireless mics that we bring in. We probably just use the analog inputs and have those be kind of at the forefront, and then we could have our second or a primary user that has the normal configuration. That way, things don't get changed.
You don't have to
You know
reprogram
what I
it.
mean?
go right
It's
back and
right,
forth
you can just
between
go
that.
right back.
Yeah, and it would, the easiest way to do it would be to have 2 separate shows.
Okay, yeah.
And so you have your master show that's this operation, and then if you're doing a performance, you just have a secondary show.
Right, okay.
They have an offline editor that you can build your shows in, or you can build it on the desk itself. The offline editor literally operates exactly like the desk. So it's fairly intuitive to use. The other option in the interim while you're waiting for your stage boxes to get here, you have 3 other consoles that are also Dante enabled that have inputs and outputs. So you could use them as stage boxes. So if those spaces were free and you wanted to bring those in, those could be configured to be used as stage boxes.
Configuring, is that something that's done by a Dante certified person kind of
That would
thing?
be suggested. Technically, you could probably do it, but I would highly suggest, just because I've seen it happen, that you have someone who's certified or you get certified before you try to attempt
And is
it.
that something that if we set up once, it would easily be changeable back to their other, like we take it?
Yeah, it would be the same scenarios we were talking about before, where you'd have a separate show.
Gotcha.
So you'd have a show that's saved as its master show, which each one of them has a master show saved on it. And then you'd have a secondary show that's stage box 1. And that way you'd be able to get in and control it that way.
And it would, and that would, okay, that would be done, and just needs to be done once.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Because then you're just toggling between shows.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah, you'd just be reloading a show,
Okay.
which is essentially you're loading a setting file.
And these are all compatible, so if you programmed, the black box board how you wanted, you can save that as a show and.
Yep.
load it.
Yeah.
Or you could roll that one in there and use that, couldn't
The
you?
shows are not compatible between desks. They're compatible between similar desks. So the show for the black box could be used on any of the other carts, but you couldn't load the black box show on
It's
this
not-
mixer
okay.
because they're different models. This is an Impact versus an Expression. They're not identical.
But I guess you could, would that box, could that plug into this network switch and power this, run this system?
If it was configured to
It
do
would
so.
have to be reconfigured.
It'd have to be reconfigured. You'd have to go in and change Dante settings, because right now, as soon as it comes on the network, it's going to automatically be routed for the black box.
Sure.
So you'd have to reconfigure it so that it would
So
operate in
literally,
here.
if you plugged it into here, it's still controlling stuff in there.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I commissioned most of the black box while they were in school. From in here.
I'm just thinking for Bazaar, if we brought does the Commons have a box?
It does.
We bring that box in here, if we split out the same signal, couldn't we run a signal out to, or whatever we do?
No.
To daisy chain them together? Or-
No, it wouldn't work that way because the system is designed in 2 segments. So you have the theater black box segment,
Okay.
that's its own AV network, and then you have the Commons
Okay.
gym
So if I plug
that
it
is
here,
one
it's
AV
not
network.
going in.
Correct. Now, Dante,
The Commons and gym are connected.
correct.
Okay.
The flip side of that, it would take a lot of back-end work because you'd have to coordinate with your IT department. But Dante is IT compliant, and it can live on any network with any other traffic. It's not any heavier than any other computer protocol or anything like that. It doesn't do any kind of weird broadcast stream or anything that's going to take down the network for everybody else. They could create a VLAN that would isolate it on their network switches and send it over there. There's a lot of,
Configuring.
yes, there's a lot of configuring that would have to happen. There's a lot of conversation that goes into that. But it is possible utilizing the school's network and those VLANs to be able to get Dante anywhere there's network because it's designed for that.
Signal between the gym.
Yeah, so if we brought the box from the stage into the
Commons, you mean?
Commons, plugged them both together and ran an out from the Commons box into the gym box, then we could be, say, technically, you talking on the same, one mic from the Commons, and it would route, and we could route signal into the gym as well.
No. So,
We're running an event where we use the Commons and the gym simultaneously.
okay.
And so I'm just wondering, in the past, that's been go in the office and use
So-
the all-school announcement mic.
Right.
But I'm-
So there is a way to do that. That would be, again, a Dante configuration thing. So there's 2 types of Dante transmissions, which is getting fairly detailed. But you can do a unicast connection where it's sending from one transmitter to one listener. But then you can also do a multicast where you're communicating from one device to multiple devices and you're assigning where those are going. You can also send the same signal from one device to 2 devices unicast or multiple devices.
That's back-end setup.
Correct. Again, it's configuration in Dante, so you'd want to be certified or have someone do it who is certified. But yes, lots of flexibility. There's a lot of ways that it can be accomplished. It just requires coordination and know-how.
But for right now, we should consider the theater, the black box, the commons, and the gym as separate
Correct.
sound system entities.
There are ways they can all be connected. It just requires coordination.
So, this kind of answers my question, but would there be a way to get an audio feed from the auditorium to the black box? If, say we use that room as a green room for shows and we want to be able to hear an audio feed from the auditorium during shows, we can do that, okay?
Yeah, so the easiest way to accomplish that would be taking one of your line outputs from this mixer, whatever your, a matrix feed of your left, right, or something like that, and bring the mixer from there over here, plug the output of that into one of the line inputs on the mixer, because they have both line and mic inputs. Plug into the line input and route that signal over there. Obviously, you'd want to make sure it's all working correctly, but that mixer will automatically send audio over there.
And that same exact thing can't be done between the commons and the gym, even though you said those were on the connected AV networks?
Well, you wouldn't be able to use the same microphone in both, because you would have to, well, yes, I guess technically you could route, there's 1,000 ways you can skin a cat, right? But technically you could you could do the same thing. You could daisy chain out of one mixer into the other mixer and route that to the gym. That'd be another way that you could do it.
And you could roll that gym mixer into the commons and have them side. You'd need both mixers though to accomplish it, not in the Dante. You're kind of physically.
Correct, yeah, you're physically doing it. It'd be cleaner in Dante because there's less conversion and that sort of thing.
That
So
might
in
be
the
work.
long term, a better solution might be to have someone who's Dante certified configure that
Yeah,
so that we could get
Do that
like
for
a
all
feed
of
to
us.
the black box.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and those are all possible.
What if you just held two microphones?
Right. Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, and
The medieval solution.
right. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're happy to come alongside and advise. I personally freelance, as I mentioned, so I'd be happy to help you guys figure that out too. So,
How hard, you mentioned a couple times, how much work hours is Dante certification?
I think the total certification is somewhere around 100 hours, something like that.
Okay.
It's available online as well. So,
Okay.
but there's a lot of details to it.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and I encourage the certification because from personal experience, I started playing with Dante before I was certified, and I caused so much heartache for myself. I spent hours fighting with things, and then after I did certification, I was like, oh, that's why that didn't work. So, I would definitely encourage the certification because it definitely makes it way more intuitive.
Sure.
So, make sense?
Yep.
Cool.
Okay. Sorry, we derailed.
So good.
Huge tangents.
Yeah, no, we're good. We've got plenty of time. So, jumping back to the console, so you've got your all the wireless mics coming in, inputs, outputs. The way that it's currently configured, layer 1 is your stuff that's available on the touch panel here. Then your expanders. Moving down to your second expander, then continuing on in Dante. Those could be reconfigured to analog if you wanted to.
Okay.
Then you've got your two stereo channel input channels, your effects returns, you got VCAs.
Where are those stereo inputs from?
They're configurable. Right now, so with everything, if you want to know where it's coming from, select the channel you want to know, hit input. Right now, it's assigned as a effects return.
Oh,
So lexicon return 1, so that's whatever is assigned to that effects slot.
okay.
But it could be 2 inputs on the back, it could be the line inputs, it could be whatever you
You
want.
could set up
A CD
dongle
player,
or,
yeah.
input.
We got it, we're in there.
Got it.
Yep. Yeah, it's user configurable, so it could be whatever you want. Then you have your 4 sends for your effects units, VCAs. So VCAs are your is a way to group a group of channels together, just like in the old days. Technically, these aren't VCAs. Technically, they're DCAs, but Soundcraft wanted to keep their nomenclature the same, so they call them VCAs. VCA stands for voltage controlled amplifier, which in the big old analog days was a way that you could control the voltage going to a whole bunch of channels and affect their volumes together. Instead of having to do, this to move 10 faders, you could do 1 fader, and it would affect those at the same time. This is technically a digitally controlled amplifier, or a DCA, which is what most digital manufacturers refer to them as. They chose to use VCA, so whether you're using VCA or DCA, that's what that is. So you've got 8 total VCAs available to you that you could utilize. You've got 14 mixes. There are 10 mixes that are automatically set to pre-fader. The dark green ones are set to post-fader. And so you've got 4 that are set to post-fader automatically from the factory. And then you've got 4 matrices that are, so a mix is a collection of inputs going to an output. A matrice is a group of outputs going to another output. So you could take your left, right, and one of your mixes, sum them together, and send them out through a matrice to get a mix of outputs. So say you had a news channel coming in, this would be a way that you could get them a level. You could adjust their send level without having to adjust the level in the house, because they'll need a different level.
You could send that out to a digital recorder.
Digital recorder.
Send it out to a monitor?
You could send it. You could send it to a monitor. Typically, you would send your mixes to a monitor rather than a matrix.
Okay.
You could send a matrix. If you were wanting to send your main mix to the monitor, then you'd use a matrix for that, because you can't route a main mix to a channel mix.
Okay.
They don't allow you to do that. So the other detail on mixes. So right now, the way that this desk is configured, mix 1 is monitor 1, mix 2 is monitor 2. 3 through 14 are currently configured to go to the stage boxes when they arrive. So then they would go to your, continuing down the line.
You said there are 8 outs on
8 outs on each one, so you have 16 outs at the stage, or the orchestra pit, or wherever you put them.
And the 2 boxes are configured as separate mix outs, right? Like, so there's
Correct.
8 on each, so it's not.
Yeah, so
8 doubled, it's
correct. Yeah, so it starts at 3 on expander 1, and then it goes 4, 5, 6, on through until you get to 14. And then I think I put matrices on the remaining ones, so you're using up all 16. But those could be configurable however you want.
Okay,
That makes sense.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
It's just, this has a maximum of 14 mixes, so that's why you
Correct.
had to go into the matrices to
Correct.
get to the 16 outs to the
Correct.
boxes.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. And so so that's kind of channel layout on the desk. Thinking from input going to output, just because you're in digital land doesn't change the fact that your trim or preamp is always your first volume control coming into the desk. So in your first section on the left, just like you read left to right, top to bottom, you operate the desk left to right, top to bottom. So when you come in, plug in your microphone, grab your wireless mic, you're going to grab it and you'll start talking into it. It has a meter on the channel. It also, when you select a channel, is going to show you your input level here. You have the ability to adjust trim here. Because it's happening, the preamp is in the DSP for these microphones. For the expanders, it's in the expander itself. With the expanders, you're controlling over Dante. You'll control the preamp settings directly through Dante. In this particular case, you have a trim rather than a preamp control. But they're set so that there's plenty of headroom for
So
normal
you're saying
usage.
when you're in the expander, that trim is going to be adjusting it, the preamp level in the box itself?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So obviously, first thing you do is make sure your signal level is good. Everything is gain staged currently, so when you talk into the microphone normally, straight up at noon is going to get you normal operating level. You can adjust it up and down. You have got, I think it's 20 dB down and 20 dB up on this mixer, so you've got lots of gain volume there.
And you said they're set for vocal levels now, so if
Yes.
if we started using these wireless for instrumental mics, trim them down.
Yeah, you'd want to trim it down.
Got it.
Yep. Then directly below it, next thing that you would use would be the high pass filter. So that's just an EQ filter that cuts off the bottom end. It does literally that, lets the high pass. Next over is your gate.
What is that set at right now?
So they're set at, that this indicates it's at 250. But that was, the slope is pretty slight on them, so that was where it sounded natural.
Okay.
It sounded at 250 on the console, it sounded the same as the DSP setting that was at 100.
Oh.
So
Okay.
just variation in slope.
Sure.
Next over is your gate, so you can think of your gate as a automatic mute button, essentially. But it gives you the ability to adjust when, based off threshold, when it's on, when it's off. And it also, there's a variation of depth control, how far off it's going, whether it's turning all the way off or partially off.
What's the factory setting on that, or what's
So
the default?
factory default setting is off.
No gate.
No gate at all. I have set up the gates so that it all operates and sounds the same in manual mode as a starting place as it does in auto mode.
Okay. So this is where if we found that we're getting that little bit of, when the announcement mic at the choir concert, I'm seeing some line level come through, I can change the gate
Correct.
to get it to come out. Okay.
And you shouldn't need to make a whole lot of changes because again, I tested it at all volume levels to make
Okay.
sure it was pretty consistent. Obviously, if someone steps up to the microphone and they're holding it down here and whispering, you have more problems than the level that's coming at you.
As is usually the case.
Right. So next over is your compressor. So that, for simplicity's sake, is going to be the same as it's like an automatic fader. You're just compressing it down, making it so that your dynamic range isn't so big, and keeps it kind of in a consistent range. I'm not going to go super deep on controls and how they work, but next over is your equalizer. It just gives you a 4-band control to be able to shape the audio. Again, the settings that are currently in it in the master show match the tone quality of the DSP. So whether you're in the console or you're in auto mode, out of the box, it's going to sound very similar.
It looks like you rolled off the lows a little.
Yeah, a little bit. Those are pretty typical adjustments that I would do to any 58 capsule. 58s are the most common microphone in the world, and they also don't sound like a person unless you do something to them. So those are common adjustments that I would make for proximity effect and that sort of thing with any standard 58.
if and when we were to change these settings, I'm thinking for instrumental performance, do they auto reset at all?
Nothing is auto. You're in manual mode. So if you were to do that, you can just recall the show and it'll come back to the same settings.
Well, I can recall what this is.
You can recall this show because it's currently saved on the desk.
Got it.
And I would encourage you to get a thumb drive, plug it in, save that show to the thumb drive and have it,
This master
yes, and have it nearby the console, and then save that same show to the cloud so you have it in multiple places. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is so that if you get a kid in here who starts messing around with settings, you can recall it back to a known state. Also, if for some reason at some point in time, because it's electronics, you have to send it to be serviced, when you get it back, you can plug in that thumbstick, recall your show, and you have the same console. And there's no reconfiguration that needs to happen. I just did a service call like last year for a school that didn't save their show, and so they sent the desk out to be serviced because it wasn't working correctly. They got it back and they're like, oh no, they wiped our show. Well, yes they did, and you should have saved it. So we reconfigured it for them, which we can do that, but you can save yourself a lot of time and heartache just by having it saved, and in multiple places. And that way you can always bring it back to a known state. I personally have master shows for every console that's out there that I have on different thumb drives for each manufacturer and each model. And so I have a whole little satchel of all my show files for various types. So that's the input controls. You have similar controls on the output side for each output channel. While we're on the input side, you have your matrix or your mix sends and your matrix sends. So this desk works off of fader flip. So if you're wanting to send to a matrix or a mix, you're going to select the mix you want to send it to. You're going to see the screen light up, and then you're going to select, and you'll see your channel strips turn green, and that's to indicate that you're in a monitor mix right now. And then when you deselect it, the light goes off. You're back on your main mix. It's easy, especially as a newer operator, to lose track of where you're at in your communication or in your layers. And so within that, just creating, as you're teaching kids, teaching them to, make their monitor mix and then come back to their main level, and just create that habit of coming back to the same place every time so that you're not accidentally changing a monitor mix when you're trying to change the PA. So that is, that's how you get into a monitor mix. Same thing with matrices. You'll notice that all the input channels just went dark because I went to a matrice, and your output lit up as yellow. So now you could send your main to there, or if you go down to your mixes, you can see your mixes turned colors, so you can send those out as well. So that's how if you're going to send, say you send your left right there, when you hit matrix, it's going to pop up your left right. Once you select it, it'll pop up here so you can adjust the level to that send. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
So matrix, you're sending you're going to end up sending mixes to the matrix. Right?
Correct. Yep. So you can send effects, you can send any of your other mix outputs or your mains.
And then
And how do you choose
how
to
did you
send
get to
that?
the mains? So,
So
you have to
you select
mirror?
it. Yep.
Well.
You hit matrix again and select, and it'll bring them up there.
So when you're not in Matrix,
Select it.
oh, you have to hit it twice to
Yeah.
get these guys to come up.
Yep.
Because the first thing it's doing is dealing with your other mixes, but if you're then like, I just want to sum out.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So if I'm adjusting that, like I'm thinking about sending to the matrix. Obviously, I can send them both, but how is it that I'm selecting left or right here?
So this, the way that these faders work, you have left, right, and mono. And so right now mono is kind of irrelevant to what we're talking about, but it'll show up either way. So left, right is one stereo channel, mono is one mono channel.
And are those, if I'm selecting these, isn't that also just adjusted right here?
Hmm?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't, if I'm just trying to send on the matrix, it doesn't.
It doesn't, yeah, it doesn't matter. Yep.
Got it. That makes sense.
Cool. So within the setup of the mixer, if you have an input channel selected, upper right hand corner, you can hit input and it's going to give you the channel name. It's going to tell you what it's doing, its pan settings, and its patching. You can scroll through and look at your various settings. You can say where you want to pull your mix from, which currently is set to post EQ or post fade for the last 4. So there's some different options for, you can do pre-dynamic, post EQ, post fade.
And just pre-dynamic, that is before the slider, but it's not before trim. Is that true?
Correct. So trim is always before everything else.
Got it. Okay.
And then pre-dynamic is going to take it out right here.
After the high pass.
After
trim and high pass.
trim and high pass.
Okay.
And then your post EQ is going to take it here.
And then
And post fader is going to take it after fader, which is actually right here, because it'll
Which is
take
the
it after the delay.
post-dynamic you're referring
So
to?
post dynamic is, so you have post EQ, which is here,
Okay,
and post dynamic, which is here.
before it EQs.
Yep.
Okay.
And then there's post fade, which is at the very end.
Wait a second. Hold.
Sorry, post EQ, pre dynamic,
Yeah.
and post fade.
And post fade even including these?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yep.
Yep. Cool.
How do I say where things go to a matrix? Is that from from here?
Or to a mix?
Well, to a mix.
No, that's from the mix.
So, but how do I assign on, is that?
Well, everything you do now to these channels is on mix 1.
Okay,
So
okay,
you
Correct.
do each mix with these.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Other things within the menus that you may need to get into is your fader setup. You can reassign any of these strips to anywhere else on the mixer. That's one of the great things about digital. The thing you have to be aware of and be careful with is that that a channel that is not on the surface is still operational. So if you're going to unassign it from the surface, you want to make sure that your channel is off and fader is down before you unassign it, because otherwise you can have like wireless mic 1. If I were to have the volume all the way up and unmuted and then unassign it from the surface, that microphone is still on and unmuted in the background,
And you don't see it.
you can't see it.
Like one of those what the hell moments.
So within that, in this context, just so that you guys know, under security, you can go in. Right now, the user is set up as administrator so that you can do whatever you want. You can go in and have different types of users, and Soundcraft has a whole section on how to set up users, but that way you can go in and you can set it up so that there's different users and profiles so that they can only do certain settings. And so it helps you to lock down the console so they can't get in and change clocking or any kind of settings like that. So there's various ways you can lock it down so that it doesn't cause issues.
So are users independent from scenes, or do
Yes. So there's,
2 users, and those, we always have 2 users no matter what scene you load?
correct. So there's essentially 3 levels, if you will. So your primary level is show, which is all settings on the desk overall. Your second level is scenes, which is any settings you've made to channels that you've assigned to that scene. And then the third one is your users, which gives you the ability to adjust what they can control. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because what we'll probably do is we'll want to set up a user specifically for when students are running sound that doesn't, where they can't touch, like routing, things like that, but they can
Correct.
still,
Still operate, run faders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that way I think it's,
Right. Yeah, you can go in and you can set up a user that's just mutes and faders, or you can give them mutes and EQs. You can adjust it around however they need. Every manufacturer is a little bit different in how they do users. I haven't done users on the Impact personally, so I can't really speak to it. But I looked through the manual and they had a whole section on setting up users. So I'm not
Is that
going
manual up there, or is that given to?
it comes in the as-built document set, but it's also available online.
Sure.
If you Google Soundcraft SI Impact, there's a PDF, right? It'll be the first thing that comes up on the page after the ads. You can click on it, and
Okay.
the last time that I looked at a paper manual was like 15 years ago. I just pick it up on my phone anytime I need it. So, so yeah, they're all readily available online. Every piece of gear in here, with the exception of anything that's labeled Crestron, has a manual that's available for it.
Do they not?
They keep it locked down. They want you to be licensed and certified. And so you have to go through all of their training procedures and have accounts before you can do anything on the back end of their devices.
Okay.
Yep. Any other questions as far as the console's concerned?
I did notice they got this EQ band here. Is there a setting where
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
able
So,
to physically look at that?
yep. So your last 2 buttons under your layer assignment are your graphic EQ. It automatically will go to your left-right unless you're in a mix, and then when you hit if you select a mix, you can go in. Let me get my buttons in the right place here. Why is it not?
Are we still in security? Is that
Oh,
what we
it
need to do?
probably. There we go. That's why I was in user setup. So if you go into mix 1 and you hit EQ, it's going to bring up the EQ for mix 1.
Cool.
And so you've got low and high.
Nice.
Low is your bottom number,
Yep.
and high is your top number. It's in octaves, as you would expect, so, or in 1/3 octave, just like the old school graph EQ. It automatically, if you're not in a mix, it'll automatically come up to your left-right. So when you hit it, this is your main mix, graph EQ. So if you are in a situation where you need to make a change because there's feedback or tonally it changes, because a room will change drastically when it gets warmer or colder. A room will change drastically when you fill it full of people. Water bags change the room very much because we soak up a lot of sound. So your tone quality can change. I'll typically be making adjustments to my main EQ throughout a show based on what the HVAC and the people in the room are doing to maintain stability and the same audio quality.
And everything's set flat. on everything right now?
Yeah, so the system is, right now it's in a nearly final tune. It's 95%. We can't go the last 5% until the rest of the acoustics are completed, but it's operationally 100% functional.
Yeah.
So the system is tuned flat. Well, essentially flat. So with the system tuning, I typically shoot for, and they typically spec a boost in the low end of 6 dB starting at 250 hertz. So it kind of gives you a warmer sound to the system, and then it's flat from there up. So the system response has been dialed in and tuned so that it's essentially flat with a little bit of low end boost, because that's the way we're used to hearing sound. Every set of headphones that you pick up, every car stereo, every home stereo is bottom end hyped, so there's a little bit of a bottom end tilt to the system so that it matches what we're used to hearing. It also compensates for the Fletcher-Munson curve, which is that the quieter audio is, the more bottom end that you need to get the same level that you do at higher volumes, which is why when you go to a concert, it sounds so loud, because the overall level, why the subs feel so loud is because the overall level is high. But if you were to bring that overall level down, you have to make an adjustment on the subs to get that same level.
Yep.
So this gives you the ability to get that same tonal quality at a lower level without having to bump it up as much.
Yep.
So it just creates a little bit more headroom with the same tonal quality.
So if something was wonky in here, I could go and reset it to the scene,
Show.
to the show.
Yep.
And that's already saved in here. That doesn't
Yeah.
even require the USB.
Correct. Unless someone deletes it, which can happen.
Right, yeah.
So you just go, menu, which will bring you to the screen. Whatever it's on, always hit menu, and it'll always bring you back to the screen. Hit show, and then you're going to say load, and it's going to give you your sources that you're drawing the file from. MMC is the internal memory on the device. If you had a USB, it would show up here as USB. You can select there, you can select the theater folder, and there's your master show.
Okay.
Now, will that get that'll get a one more revision once that panel's in?
No,
You
no,
won't change EQ or anything?
this won't change anything. It'll always, this is complete from a show perspective. What will change would be in the system processor.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So once the acoustics are complete, I'll come back in and we'll do a final tuning, and then the consultant will come walk and verify that it meets their design intent. And as long as they sign off on it, then we're complete.
Okay.
But currently we're waiting for the acoustics to arrive.
Got it. Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep, 100%. And to save that out to the USB, I'm assuming it's the same menu tree.
Yeah, so it's show, save as,
Gotcha.
and then say you wanted to save your upcoming play. So you just change your name to Puff and hit apply, and then tell it where you want to save. Save where you want to save it, and then hit OK, and it'll save it.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. And the manual, again, it'll walk you through all of that as well. So, and they have a series of videos for kind of each one of those sections to help with that.
Okay.
Any other questions on the console?
Are there anything else in this main menu that we should be thinking about, or would you think we would?
Not generally.
Not any. Okay.
You can go, if you wanted to see what the EQ is doing, if you select a channel, it'll show you what your EQ is doing. This screen and this and what you hear are not the same. There are quirks in this particular desk I've personally experienced, and I've referenced them on analyzer software that what that graph on that screen is showing me is not what I hear and not what my RTA is showing me. So use your ears, don't use the screen. But it'll get you in the ballpark anyway. So you can look at EQ. You could, if you wanted to use an insert, you could assign inserts. Although there's not a lot of scenarios where you'd need inserts. You could do, you could do various types of outboard gear, but most of the time you're going to use what's in the desk. That's the beauty of digital. But if you wanted to use some outboard, studio gear, you could insert that or that sort of thing. You have some preferences. You can adjust your LED brightness, your button brightness, screen brightness, that sort of thing. Outside of that, the security is going to be your key for making your users.
And when you set up those accounts, then is it going to enable some sort of a passcode system, or is it really just?
I believe that there is an ability to password protect them. And as a side note, you'll want to save that to a master show because the master show doesn't have users built into it. So you'll want to save a second, another revision of your master show. And I would encourage you to do it as another revision so that you have, as it's commissioned today, and then you have a rev that has your users so that they're separate. In case there's some, as you're setting up users, you make a mistake and it's not doing what you want it to do, you can always go back. Because even myself, that's why it's Rev 4. I had 4 revs before I got it to where I wanted it to be. And so it's the same thing when you're setting up users. Save a new rev, don't save over the one that you're currently working on.
So Rev 5 would be with the users.
That's what I would do if it was me, yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%, yep.
Cool. Any other questions? I don't know whether it
thought
does
it did. I
or
was
not.
looking.
I don't remember.
Maybe
Yeah,
that
it does
yeah.
have a. Nope,
Yeah.
that's word clock.
It's not one right.
So that's a yes.
No?
Yeah, I don't
It's
think
all
it.
backlit, is it?
I don't think it has a light.
Well, probably not. Yeah, I guess it is all backlit, but
Yeah.
I always carry a flashlight when I'm doing shows.
want to get a lamp or something.
I'll buy
Yeah.
you a Costco headlamp.
Right.
Well, I mean, there's text on here that you might need to see.
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
true.
You want to see your levels
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
And especially, if you need to see a
A
list
script,
of songs from
right.
a concert or your script or whatever.
Yeah, and they make desk-mounted ones. You can screw them down, or they make them with heavy
They
bases.
gave us
Or
an overabundance of little lights, so I think they sell bases for those.
Oh, cool.
What do you mean by little light?
They're like little gooseneck
Oh, those
lights
things.
that you would
Oh, okay.
normally plug into a soundboard
Uh-huh.
or a light console.
Okay.
But the light consoles that they spec for the black box in the AV or the video room don't accept little lights, but they spec them. So we have a whole bunch of them. We could, if we got a base,
Okay.
we could.
How big are the show files? Like,
small.
they're small.
They're a few megs.
Oh, okay.
I think they're like 25 megs or something.
wow.
It's essentially an XLS file. It's very basic, simple stuff. Yeah, so. They do recommend for the thumb drive that you use, they recommend a 8 gig or smaller.
Because that's
too
below
much
the
to
whole
read.
thing.
Yeah, for the amount of space that it has to manage, the processing power is not very high on these, so you get over 8 gigs and it's not kind of like reading files off of it.
It's like when you put that 8 gig chip in your
Yeah.
camera,
Right.
and then it takes.
Yeah,
5 minutes
that
worth
time
of
when we put the
turnaround.
256 gig into the Zoom recorder,
Right.
Yeah.
went to lunch, came back, and it was still loading.
You're right.
Oh, hi, Matt.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Any other questions?
Who's gonna know about that camera?
Matt, does that PTZ camera have audio?
Not yet,
Is it going to?
eventually.
Okay.
I have some more more hoops to jump through.
We were just doing our
The
audio.
intent of the audio is to come from where?
The mixer. So the mixer is Dante enabled.
That is correct.
Which will send audio, but I'm having a little hard time figuring out how to get it routed correctly.
Yeah.
So we're close. I just need to do a couple more things. But I was just working with some video production teachers. In the meantime, these devices I have, portable, they basically send the same signal as that, but with video camera, standalone video camera. And what I'm proposing, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, is I loan those portable NDI devices and we set a camera up there, either side, so we could conceivably have 2 cameras plus the PTZ, and those cameras can send an NDI signal back to the video production room, and we just tested that.
Okay.
While I'm trying to figure out how to route the mixer audio. Okay?
So we need to get, but we'll need to get audio to the mixer for you to send,
Correct.
because we don't have anything set up right now for.
Yeah, so
for
I mean, if you wanted
general sound.
concerts streamed, there would need to be some sort of stereo mic. I know you don't want to mic everything, right? But you'd need some sort of stereo mic that would send a left-right signal.
There's a few ways you could get at it. Technically, it's not within my scope currently, but I'd be happy to help you guys figure it out from a personal perspective. I'd be happy to help you guys sort that out. So, but there's always a plethora of ways that you can accomplish that goal. So I'd be happy to partner with you in figuring that out.
Work in progress. I didn't know you guys were in here.
Yeah.
Sorry to barge in.
No, you're good.
So you guys figure out that stuff, and then I'll work with these guys, and then I'll kind of show you what I got going on when we meet tomorrow.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
We're gonna go up here on the catwalk.
Yeah, not through there. No.
That doesn't go to catwalk.
Yeah, you're gonna want to
Take a
walk around.
left,
Yeah.
and then,
Up to there, all the way up?
Yeah, or you can come up, you just walk up this way and you can go
Either
up
way.
through the booth.
whatever.
Oh, okay. All right.
Cool. Sorry, Karen. No, you're okay.
No, you're good. Other questions on the AV system? Anything you can think of off the top of your heads? Okay. Cool.
Right on.
Perfect. Well, let's take a break and then we can hit the band, choir, orchestra rooms here in just a little bit. But I need to rest my voice for a few minutes and eat some calories. But do we want to say noon in the?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
We can. We'll probably do.
At noon, it would be the
Band room?
band room,
Okay.
Well, there's
because
no kids
orchestra's
there.
in
Sure.
in that other room. Yeah.
And orchestra doesn't have its choir mics yet anyway, so
Sure.
we'll plan on band at noon.
And then there's at 1:15, then we would need to go into the choir room.
No.
Is that
All
No.
3 spaces are
All
used
3 spaces are used at once.
at 1:15.
I don't
So-
think that it'll
oh,
take
we
more
would-
than an hour.
Okay.
And is
And
They're
we
there,
fairly
could move
straightforward.
theory into
are
the
we gonna
practice
need
room.
to have some time in that orchestra room, because that's where all those other networks,
Yeah.
and channels come together?
It would be a good idea to spend some time
We
in
could put theory in the
orchestra.
practice room.
Well, but there's also from 12:40 to 1:10, 1:15.
Yeah.
There's nobody in that space.
Correct.
So
I'm
we
just
could,
saying
we
if
could
we
start in the band room, and if we, then at the end, move to the orchestra.
Yeah,
to talk
yeah,
about-
We are.
Perfect. All right, so my name's Remington Smith. I'm with Diversified. We installed the AV systems in the band, choir, and orchestra spaces. We're going to be looking at the console, the X-Air XR18 Air mixer that is installed in all 3 spaces, looking at its operation, and then in a little bit we'll shift over and we'll cover the infrastructure side of that, but first we'll look at the operations side. So this is the X-Air PC Edit app. It user interface wise is very similar to the iPad, so you'll see similar controls. So I'll go over getting connected to it and communicating with it first. So there's 3 essential modes to operating this. They're controlled on the head unit itself. You have the access point, which is the wireless access point that's on it, that's labeled for each room, band, choir, and orchestra. And then you have the ability to set it to be configured on the house wired network or the local LAN, so that's like a Cat5 jack in the wall. For today's purposes, I'm plugged in with a standard network cable to the box, and it's set to its first position, which is LAN. And it's set up to assign an address automatically. So once I open the software, I can go click on the little gear setup window here. And because we're doing 2 displays, I gotta get my mouse to come down over here. Where'd you go? Come here, mousey. Where are you? There you are. There we go. Size of displays is very different.
Oh, I see.
So this is what setup looks like. So you've got connection, access point, wired LAN, audio MIDI, monitor, and user preferences. So when you hook up to it, you'll go to connection. This is a little bit different on the iPad, but similar kind of concept. If you're doing the access point, you'd come in and you can set the access point standards. You can set your security, your SSID, what channel it's using. If you're doing wired LAN, you've got the ability to set your security and such, set your IP addresses, or run as DHCP. Then as LAN, you can either run static, DHCP server. So depending on what settings you need to run, you can either set it to static or it can automatically come up DHCP. In this particular case, I have my computer set to DHCP. You can see that it's got a link local address of 169 here. And so it's automatically talking between the 2 computers in DHCP, and the device is saying, hey, I'm here. If it was on the network, it would, and you had it set to DHCP, it would automatically pick up the address from the DHCP server on the network. And then it would populate that.
Right when you're there, this screen would have all 3.
Correct. Yep. Then you'd select the one that you want to access. So in this case, we're accessing band. I obviously don't have any other options because I'm physically connected to this one. Then you're going to say connect. It's going to say, do you want to transfer your current settings from the mixer to the PC or the PC to the mixer? Now I know that yesterday I loaded the show to the mixer for this room, so I'm going to go ahead and say mixer to PC. If you have your show saved on whatever computer you're running it on, you can load your show, your scene from your console or from your computer to the console. So the setting for that would be PC to mixer, and so then it would send these settings there. I don't want to do that though. So I'm going to say connect, and oh, I did it anyway.
It just didn't load anything.
Correct.
It didn't overwrite either way, right?
Correct. So I'm going to say load and load scene, and it's going to pop up your standard Windows dialog here. And it's going to say, where do you want to get that from? I'm going to say band, choir, and orchestra that I have penned over here, and I'm going to say Bandmaster 2, and double click it, and it's going to load. This is what the Bandmaster looks like. And go back to settings.
Because as soon as you loaded, it disconnected.
Correct.
Got it.
So I'm going to say connect, and I'm going to say PC to mixer, because I know that the settings that are here are what I want to see there. I'm going to say continue. So now this is live what's happening inside that mixer. So in each of the settings, you can see the meters going on for the choir mics right now. If you had inputs plugged into your floor box there, you'd see those come up on mic 1 and 2. That's where you would plug in your direct boxes, that sort of thing. And then you've got an additional, an additional 6, 8 inputs there that you can utilize for your for whatever other devices, instruments that you want to use. Direct boxes. If you're doing anything, if we talk about input sources, the mixer is expecting to see balanced mic level input. It's not, this particular mixer is not designed to take line level input, so it wants to see a mic level, so you have to run it through a transformer, which is what your direct box does. And then it's taking it from being an unbalanced instrument signal, like your Dr. Beat that's sitting there, that's sending out an unbalanced line level signal. So the direct box takes that to 300 ohm instead of 600 ohm, so it's mic level, and it balances the signal so that it's positive, negative, and shield. So positive and negative both get signal, and then negative, or the shield, protects the signal so that it can go further without interference. So that's why you want to use a direct box when you're interfacing an instrument or any kind of source. The other advantage of a direct box is it's going to give you the ability to lift the ground. So if you're getting ground hum, lifting the ground will remove that ground hum.
We have this hooked up right now
Oh yeah,
via direct. So.
exactly. So that's why you want to use a direct box, or a standard balanced microphone, SM58, or there's other varieties, but any of those will work. Console operation is very similar to what you would expect based off any other mixer that's out there. So your initial tab at the top, it's based off of tabs in the software. So you've got your various tabs. Mixer kind of gives you an overview of everything. So your top number here is the gain setting. So 38 dB is a pretty standard level for choir mics, for handheld mics, that sort of stuff. That's kind of a starting place. Obviously, with choir mics, you don't want to be sending choir mics back through the PA because you're going to create a feedback loop. So there's a couple of different ways to get signal in and out of for recording purposes, which we'll get into. You can see, we'll get to that in a minute, but there's, just like on the other consoles we were looking at earlier today, you've got phase reverse, phantom power, and channel linking, so you can link these two channels together if you wanted to. Again, with phantom power, you want to make sure that your fader is all the way down before you turn phantom power on. The choir mics will not work without phantom power. They require it because they're condensers.
And fader down or just muted?
Just muted would work too.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
Yep. With this particular version of the software, I think it's probably because of the screen, the way that it is. Let me take a look here.
Mute down below.
I think it's down at
the
the,
mute is hidden under your.
yeah, I think it's at the bottom, and I have to resize it here. Let me take a look here real quick. Yeah, the mute is at the bottom.
Like it is on the app.
Yeah, it's same on the app, so it's on the bottom here.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Something with the sizing on the touch screen, it's not showing it for whatever reason.
Okay.
Let me see if I can, yeah, it's not showing it, but at any rate, it's down below the bottom there. So you can mute it or pull the fader all the way down before engaging phantom power.
Sure.
If you plug in any kind of condenser, you're going to need phantom power or an active direct box.
Now, when we turn this on or off, is there any software setting that will auto mute so it doesn't pop? Or is that just gonna happen every time we do that?
That's just going to happen when you do it, unless you were to get up to turn the power off to the speakers.
Okay, all right.
I always felt like that was kind of an oddity in the design,
That's
is
what I
that they
thought, too.
didn't give you a light switch for the remotes, for the speakers, so you could turn them off without climbing up there. I think the intention is that you just leave the system running.
Sure.
But if you were to turn it off, you'd have to get up there and physically turn the switch off on the back of the speaker.
If we didn't want it to,
Yeah. Or just leave it running.
yeah, well, that's our intent.
So moving down, these are your sends to your auxiliaries or your matrices, which you can see listed over on this side of the screen over here. I have them configured so that your first group is your recording group for choir mics, and then your second group is your wired mics, so that you, instead of having to adjust, if you needed a simplified way to get the audio out, where you only had a two-channel recorder, like a little Zoom recorder, you could plug it into outputs 1 and 2, and
Take it off.
1 would be your choir mics and 2 would be whatever devices you have, like your click track plugged into the mics there. So it just gives you a quick way to do a recording. Even any computer has some sort of recording software in it. You can record a voice memo with 2 channels, and you could record into any device.
So all 6 right now would be sent into one channel?
Correct. Now that's, if you wanted to do it that simplified, there's another way that you can route it, which we'll get into in a minute, but this mixer has the capability of routing in and out over USB. So if you connect directly to the mixer, it has a USB port on it. It'll show up as an interface on any kind of digital audio software. And if you go to channel view and you select this, right now, if you had, say if I had Pro Tools open, I could select and I had a USB cable plugged in. I could select that as my audio card, my interface, and record into Pro Tools as it is right now. And then when I want to play it back, I can say, okay, now my source is USB, and hit play, and it's going to play that audio that I just recorded back through that same channel.
Now, would you want to set up that channel input to USB? Wouldn't you want to set that up on an unused channel?
Yeah, that would be the best idea.
Got 9 and 10?
It kind of did that. I played it when I was reading some stuff and playing around with it. It was easy to, you put it, like I put it on.
It's utility. No, it's in and out. Show it up down here on my screen. Gives you a little patching window.
Oh.
So you've got USB sends and returns.
Oh.
So you could reassign those to whatever channels you want them to be, whatever you want to use.
And then I think there's a choice whether it sends as a full 16 channels, or if it already mixes it down to 2.
Correct. Yeah, there's
One USB 1, 2 to aux.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So yeah, you can make an adjustment there to how you want to utilize it. And then obviously it gives you your standard dynamics, EQ, that sort of stuff. On the channel view, it gives you the ability to adjust your sends. Right now, this is your main output section. I have on your choir mics, I have the main output turned off so that you can't accidentally send the choir mics through the mains without having to make an extra click.
Yeah.
It's an intentional thing that you're choosing to cause feedback in your room. So that way you don't have an issue. And then you have, your flexibility to do what you want. You can rename the channels as you need to by left clicking. and then you can change the color and
Do you know
stuff.
what the change is for on a touchscreen or an iPad? Is it a double tap to do that, or?
I think so, yeah. Pretty sure it's a double tap. It's been a little while since I played with the iPad app.
If you knew an exact thing.
Yeah, it's been a little while since I played with the iPad app. Most of because I've done a back-end mixer app that you would use anyway. Like I have a little Motu interface that I use, and it has a back-end app that I use that gives me the ability to control it in addition to Pro Tools, and I'll run them simultaneously. So that's the channel overview. If you click over, this gives you your input section. So this is where you would turn phantom power on and off, adjust polarity, stereo link. This is where you can, this is one of the two ways that you can decide what analog or USB input you're using, or you can use the in-out patching screen that we were looking at a moment ago. You've got your high-pass filter, and you can decide whether or not you're going to insert effects, all right here in the screen. Moving over to gate, it just gives you a more detailed view of the gate with a few presets for things that commonly have what they think you should do for a gate. I've never been happy with the presets that come in consoles, but some people like them.
If for some reason, and we think we've been having a little bit of static on the lines, we think it's just because we haven't gotten our good DI boxes in yet.
Probably.
If that does continue, could we put a gate on, like say on our Met, so that it would only
I tried that.
work then when
didn't.
when it was actually working?
You have to engage it. So if it's not engaged, if this isn't lit, then the gate isn't going to be working. Also, you have to set your, right now your range is 60 dB, its threshold is -80, so anytime that your signal level is above -80, that gate will be open. So for that to work, you'd need to, you can see where the signal level is there. I'd need to get it up to,
So you'd have to
you
get
know,
it
up to here,
and now it's,
or even you can see the gate kicking in there. So obviously now I went up over the threshold, so it started to reduce.
Let it through.
Yeah, so
Oh, and that when the red line is gone, that's when it's open.
it's open.
correct, yeah. So that's gain reduction, so that's telling you when it's
Gotcha.
on and when it's off.
Okay.
And then the speed of your gain reduction, the speed of the attack and the release, that's your
Attack.
that's attack, release, and hold. So right now it's set so that it closes very quickly, or it opens very quickly. It closes after it holds for 500 milliseconds, then it closes for 900 milliseconds. So it's a very lazy gate is what it is.
Well, yeah, so it's unnoticed.
Yes. Well, yeah.
Offside.
Or painfully noticed, depending on the scenario. Then there's a more detailed screen of your EQ and your compressor. Similar controls to what we saw on the gate. It gives you your ratio of compression. So for every dB that it goes over, it's going to reduce by, right now it's set to 3. So for every 1 dB over the threshold, it's going to reduce by 3 dB. So if you adjust that to 1, every 1 dB it goes over, it's going to reduce it the same amount. These go all the way up to, I think, 20. So if it goes 1 dB over, it's just going to crush it down 20 dB. And then you've got an output gain, so you can adjust your output side. Mix is it's a way that you can compress the signal and then adjust your amount of compressed signal and dry signal, wet, dry. Some people refer to that as New York compression. So you compress it really hard and then you blend it in and adjust it that way. That's a pretty common studio trick. And then you've got your your standard time settings, so attack, hold, and release. And then this is related to your side chain, so you could filter it so that there's only triggering when that specific frequency goes over the amount.
And these are, you dialed all these in, I'm assuming the same on these 6 choir mics?
Yes, yeah.
And just kind of,
They're more or less flat. I didn't do a whole lot to them.
and did you adjust that? Like, I'm just curious, these settings, are they kind of like this is standard for recording, or you kind of did it to fit this space?
I did it kind of standard. Honestly, I didn't make a whole lot of adjustments to it.
Yeah.
They're pretty standard out of the box things. Most of what I did was labeling, making sure that settings were consistent across all 3 rooms, making sure that routing was the same, so everything is consistent no matter what room you're in, and then saving scenes. Sends, this is where you would adjust where you're pulling your input from, as well as how much you're sending to the various mixes. This is your main output. Again, that's where you would send it to the mains. So if you select this and you have it unmuted and your volume up, you're going to send it out of the speakers, which could cause feedback. So just be aware. Then there's 4 DCAs and 4 mute groups, which are over here, DCAs. And I think there's a separate tab for mute groups. I don't remember. Effects, they have various different types of effects that you can use, that you can route to in and out of. And then meters just gives you an overall analog inputs, effect sends, effect returns, bus outputs.
Effects in here, I use a lot of them in Logic, you know, space designers and stuff. Are these okay?
Meh.
Or should I stick to Logic?
I would use what's in Logic if it was me.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in Logic, you can use like any plugin you want.
Yeah.
And there's some really great ones out there. These are,
I'm just thinking like, if I wanted to, because I'm just thinking about, okay, I'm going to use this, let's say, to record the band, you know, and try to get a nice recording. I could get the Logic thing out and set up my sends and Space Designer, but then I was like, it might be nice to like have it come into the Zoom, at which point I don't quite have that flexibility, but.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it depends on what you're doing. If you're live broadcasting like that in Zoom or whatever, then yeah, I would use the ones that are in here. If it's something where you're going to record it and then you know, mix it, you can mix it in post and use effects in post. Yeah. For some sort of live stream or something like that, like if you didn't have students in the room for some reason, COVID.
Dialing in a little.
You could add a little reverb so there's some space and that sort of stuff. So that's kind of an overview of how the mixer works. In and out, again, that shows you your patching screen. So you've got your various ways to route things. Everything's currently set 1-to-1. Utility just gives you the ability to select what you're looking at. They have like an RTA screen that is kind of handy. I'm going to drag it up here for you. So you can select whatever you have selected. So right now we're looking at Choir Mic 1. It'll show you what my voice sounds like on an RTA, which obviously it looks like there's a lot of mid-range there, because I kind of sound like an alien.
Was all that low stuff, is that picking up the HVAC?
Yeah. Yep, that would be the HVAC probably.
It seems louder.
It does.
Well, it's colder in here.
It wasn't.
Yeah, that's a
They
pretty...
finally made it,
Dialed
when
it
I
on.
walked in here, I was like, oh, it's cold.
Yeah, I had to go get a jacket.
Yeah. And you can choose what source you want to look at. You can flip through your different... Whoops, not solo priority.
I'm wondering if they put something in there.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? No. That's kind of disappointing.
Yeah. And so it gives you the ability to have, different windows for different functionalities. So you can have a main monitor, EQ, that sort of thing. So those are all under utility. Those will pop up extra windows for those things.
What's that DCA spill?
So DCA spill, it's literally that. So let me, if I grab, I haven't played with DCA spill a whole lot on these, but the basic concept of DCA spill is if you were to take all of your choir mics and assign them to DCA 1, and then obviously then you can adjust all of their levels simultaneously. You can mute them all simultaneously. You can also, I
But
think,
isn't that what a
Different than a
DCA,
mixed
normal
group.
DCA?
Yeah.
so the difference between mix and DCA is that with a mix, you're going to a specified output. So output 1, output 2, output 3. With a DCA, you're affecting a group of channels that's going to your main mix.
Oh.
It can also, depending on how you configure it, in some consoles, I don't know on this one for sure, but you can also have some of the bigger consoles will give you the ability to do mix level DCAs, so you can adjust a group of channels within mixes.
So is a DCA almost the equivalent of your link for more than 2 channels?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it just gives you the ability to adjust a bunch of channels, especially when you're, mousing around or, you only have so many fingers on your iPad screen. It gives you a way to be able to adjust all the choir mics with one fader instead of having to do each one individually. So you could configure those. I didn't set any up, but you could do that. Nope, that didn't help. That made it worse.
Undo.
Resize. Fit, window height. Nope.
It's not reading,
For some reason, it can't get the EDID from the the screen, which is funny. At any rate,
okay.
and you have the similar settings on your mains. So if you select them, and I'm just going to resize my window here back to where I can see what it's doing. Come on, buddy. There we go.
Yeah, it's quite loud. It's way louder.
So if you go to channel and you select your left-right as your channel that you're adjusting, it will tell you in the left corner that you're looking at it. And then it gives you an EQ and a compressor. Because it's a Behringer and it's just the way that their processors work. Let's see. It'll jump to, or rather, if you wanted to do like a graphic EQ or something like that on the mains, you would have to go in and set it to be an insert. So your effects units have the ability to be, instead of an effect, you could use it as a 31 band EQ. So you could use that as your EQ if you wanted to. So any questions on the mixer itself?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, perfect. So that is kind of a 10,000 foot view. And there's no particular way that you need to go about, you know, mounting it. You can just, you know, like logging off or logging out, you can just disconnect from it and it's not going to hurt anything. If you guys decided to work with your IT department to put them on the network so that you could get them over the Wi-Fi, this is where you would come in and you'd say, I want it to be, because they'll give you an IP address most likely. And
I'm really curious. I think we could plug it in. I bet it would work because it doesn't, like because we can plug our personal computers into the LAN and it will just pick up and work, which makes me think that they're not.
They may not.
But we would want it to be static.
Ideally, you'd want it to be static, yeah. But yeah, you'd
Why
set it
static
to.
over DHCP?
There's a couple of reasons that I would personally do static over DHCP. One is, especially with a network the size of this school, if it's set to DHCP, you put it on the network, anybody in the school could access it.
Right.
If they didn't have the IP address. So having it locked down so it's IP specific, then it's going to make it less likely that it's going to broadcast that name out there. The other reason is that if there's a long power outage and the DHCP server goes down or it reassigns addresses, sometimes that software doesn't like refinding things. So that can make it a little challenging. And then you're having to work with the IT department to sort that out.
Again, instead of doing it up front.
Right,
Sure.
right.
Test it.
Yeah, totally. So that's where you would go to do that. And again, it's not, they're going to ask you what it's going to be transmitting over the network. It's literally just control data. So there's no audio that's passing. It's not doing any broadcast or anything like that. It's literally just control data.
Okay.
It's just it's like a network mouse essentially.
Yeah.
So it's literally just the software is pointing at that and saying adjust this parameter. Yeah,
Okay.
that's all it's doing. So before I close it out, any other questions that come to mind on the mixers?
The one thing I wondered about, you said it's designed for mic level inputs, and then so even though you can plug in 1/4 inch, that's not what it's designed for. Is that why we're sometimes
Yeah, it's not optimal that
going to
way.
get that line?
Yeah, you
you
could get hum and buzz. Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
Any
that's what we're doing right now until the DI box is here. So.
right. Yep, that would be the suggestion for sure. And I'm gonna unplug here and just drop it back to the access point so you can get to it with the iPad. All right, so let's talk infrastructure for a minute. So we have a few minutes, and actually just a couple of minutes. It was 12:40 that we could get.
12:40 we can.
12:40 we can be in the other.
Perfect. So we'll just, in a couple minutes, we'll just head over there, and then we can talk about infrastructure. So the way that the system's designed, you've got tie lines between orchestra and band, orchestra and choir, both network and audio lines. And then you also have tie lines from the floor box, both network and audio, to the panel in each room. And then speaker line level outputs from here to there. And then the choir mics as well come to this plate. So essentially what they did is they provided you with all the inputs and outputs that you could probably need, and then they gave you a mixer. You could bring in another mixer and interface it the same way that this one is interfacing to the panel. So that's kind of the intention, is that it gives you a lot of flexibility for growth.
That would be.
Can you say that last part one more time?
Yeah,
Like, what, listen.
No, you're good. So the infrastructure, the speakers, the microphones, the timelines, all of that is manufacturer agnostic. So
Okay.
it could interface with any mixer. If you wanted to bring in one of the portable cart mixers that are in the Commons or wherever, you could use that. If you wanted to just use if you had like an audio interface that you wanted to use, you could use that and interface with it. There's a lot of flexibility to the way that you can utilize the system.
And so I would plug that
So we could put our Scarlett,
AVNet
Yes.
1, but then how do I route all of this that's coming out of there? I don't think I'm understanding.
you'd put your Scarlett here and run your hanging mics into your Scarlett if you wanted to use that audio interface in Logic. to
Okay,
do
yeah,
a
I got
recording.
that part. We're talking about recording right now then. Is that, or running?
It could be recording, it could be using a different console, it could,
Okay.
however you want
But
to
I would
utilize
still
the
need,
space.
whatever I'm running XLR would need to go into my other console, which then I could,
Not necessarily. If you're using an interface to go into a recording software, it could accept
No
that.
console.
Yeah, you don't need a console for that because the digital audio workstation, Logic, Pro Tools, whatever, operates as NAT capacity in that situation. And the back of your interface will have the inputs for
sure.
it.
But you're saying with this over USB, it wouldn't.
You don't need it.
Yeah.
But you could
Scarlett.
utilize whatever tool you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
You know, if you're more comfortable with the Scarlett, you could use that. If you're more comfortable with using this mixer, you could use that. If you had a sweet old analog desk and you wanted to bring that in, plug it in, you could do that too. It gives you the ability to use whatever tool you want.
So I guess I'm just thinking then, so we have all these, we say we used 18 channels off that mixer, but I really wanted my station, because I'm going to record in every room. And
You
my
would do that
station's
in
over
there, but
there,
yeah.
but then how do I get this signal of these 18 channels over to there? Or would I ever need to do that?
I don't see a lot of scenarios where you would need to do that.
You would bring your stage boxes in here.
Yeah.
And start to use those over the AV network,
Yeah.
would be how you would do that.
Over
Yeah.
the AV.
If you
That
were
makes
gonna
sense to
record
me.
16
That
mics,
makes sense to me.
you know,
Okay.
multi-track.
Yep. I'm down.
Yep. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you see, I'm just thinking, I mean, I ordered one just through Amazon just to try it out. Essentially it's a KVM controller, keyboard, video, mouse, HDMI controller, so that I could have my computer here, but and just essentially plug in there, but wireless, one Ethernet here. And that should still do this, because it's taking it over the CAT.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it would just have a receiver that would plug
Yep.
into.
Yeah, it has a
This
sender and
end.
receiver. I'm
Yep.
just
Yeah.
trying to eliminate the kids pulling my Ethernet cable or
I get that.
gaffing it down.
Tying it to the floor.
Yeah, and then at that point you just have your receiver on this end and you plug into your display
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
with
Okay.
those three lines.
So we're not crazy by thinking like that way.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it all comes down to the quality of the device. There are some video over Ethernet devices that are super cheap that are not very reliable. So you just have to be careful.
Any suggestions for that?
Not off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up because the thing is right now with the supply chain and what it is, the ones that I would recommend aren't available. So I would want to find you one that you could get that would be reliable, and I don't have that answer off
How
the top
about
of
a
my
price
head.
range?
You're probably looking 300-ish, somewhere in there.
We found these AV access KVMs for 240, that is, and that's what I'm gonna try.
Yeah, give it a
Just
shot.
seeing if I'm getting bad quality of audio coming over, or connectivity issues, it could be the device.
Could be
Need to
the
buy a
device,
better
yeah.
device.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Although the run is pretty short from
Right.
here to there, so it should work fine. Even a cheap device should work fine.
And yeah. I'm just thinking, the audio path, I'm not gonna rely on the HDMI for the audio path though, because then I'd have to tie the TV.
All right, so we're going over infrastructure of how the 3 rooms interconnect as well as the practice rooms. So this room operates just like band and choir in the standard operation of your channel. Mic 1 and 2 come from your floor box to this panel, and the same thing in each of the other rooms. And they go locally only to that room. Then you have your choir mics, which are your, on the bottom section here, your 6 choir mics. And then you have mics 3 through 16 that are located in the practice rooms, and you can decide what combination of those you want to use. And then you also have the same in each of those plates. You've got 2 of your AV network, and those are all patchable, so you can utilize them however you need.
And in this room, AV1, 2 are in the floor box, right?
Correct. Yep. And then in the other rooms, you just have 1 and 2 because they're only the floor boxes. And then you also have interconnection possibilities. So there's an audio tie line and a AVNet tie line between here and choir and here in band. And you'll see the other end of those on each of those panels, which just gives you the ability to route audio between, or network between the 2, between all 3 rather.
But it's only a single channel, so you would only
Correct.
be running a mono signal?
Correct.
And I mean, I understand like I'm thinking, like obviously with the stage box, the inner tie between here and the band room makes sense.
The data.
I'm not as sure on what functionality or what kind of usage is having that XLR between those 2 rooms.
So a possible scenario would be if you had, say you wanted to take all the choir mics, you route them out through mix 1 as it's currently configured, right?
Yep.
Take mix 1 output, plug it in here, bring that into your mixer. Now you've got a channel that you can record the choir mics from that room into the system in this room, or vice versa. So
Got it. Okay.
it just gives you a way to route audio, even if it's
Do a
not
little combining
stereo.
over there.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just gives you a way to get audio routed between the spaces. Outside of that, you've got 2 speaker jacks that go up to the walls. So you've got speaker left and speaker right on either side, and it's the same in all 3 spaces.
Okay.
This room, we just got all the parts in for the choir mics, so they'll be in, I think they're being installed next Friday.
Oh, good.
So those are coming. And the classroom system speaker that you see up there for the choir room will be here the same day. We've got it back. It had to be repaired. It was dead from the manufacturer, so it was repaired and will be installed that same time.
And that setup is the Lightspeed.
That's the Lightspeed, and we've trained on it previously. The school district has a video floating around somewhere.
And if we wanted to use it, the 1/8 inch on the wall there that you could tie to the TV, or 3.5 millimeter, sends out to that.
Correct. In a space this size, that would be a little bit light.
Well, I think we're going to get more
But-
we're going to have a stage bug like that one routed to the board for that, like we talked about.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Kim?
Okay.
Nope, you're gonna need to re-explain like half of this to me at some point, but.
All good.
And they do have videos online for the XR mixer and iPad app and that sort of stuff, because it's a kind of an entry-level product, so they have a lot of support for the back end of it. So look up YouTube videos on it. There's all kinds of resources out there, and their manuals are pretty decent. So if you read through it, it'll get you up to speed on it. So
All right.
yeah, cool.
Anything else you're thinking of, Mark?
Not that, wanted to talk a little bit more about some of these extra off the other possibilities that we talked about, and maybe find out some,
You mean in the auditorium
yeah,
possibilities?
yeah, and whether that would be, I don't know where that comes from, but if we need to do that or somebody else does, as far as finding the money for that kind of stuff.
For the audio thing in there?
Yeah, for some of those things,
Audio.
yeah, I'd be, but other than this is all great. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Tim, did you want to try to turn on
Yeah,
the system in the auditorium,
Yeah.
like before he leaves and without our assistance to see what happens? Like, you know what I mean? So like if you had to be independent.
can we do a quick trial of like turning on the wireless system in the auditorium and those
Yeah,
kind of things
yeah.
while you're still here?
By all means, play with it, get used to it. I will be in the area tomorrow, so feel free to play with it today, play with it tomorrow, figure out if you have some questions, and then we can answer those questions, and you can always recall settings back, so.
Okay.
Do we need to say, I wondered about that. Do I need to go into that app and save the show settings like I'm gonna do in there for these?
Yes, that would be a good idea.
Same idea.
Yep.
Well, is there a flash drive on this?
There's not a flash drive.
But I'll be iPadded in or networked in. I can just save it in the Google in our file drive.
Correct. And we also have the files, and we have them saved with your guys' project. So we also have a copy. If you ever run into an issue, you can reach out to service, and they have them as well.
It's simple for us to. We'll just put them in our shared drive so they're they're there.
Yep,
I don't
exactly.
see us needing to edit them, but
No.
if we did, we could always save revisions as
Yep.
a new revision.
I'm just
Right.
thinking we should just even use the extra time we have now to just do that, and then it'd be done.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and then get to try out
Okay.
that stuff.
I think we're good.
Cool.
And then just remind me, you said that there are mics in the auditorium, but it didn't come with cords or stands or anything like that, cables and stuff?
Correct. There are 4 SM58s, no cables or stands.
Okay.
And they're in that box upstairs.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
put them in
Yeah.
the drawer, actually.
Yep.
Yeah, I
We
saw
should
them up there. I just
We
want to
should
make
mark
sure
them,
if
we should label them, and.
Yeah, they aren't marked, so we have our label maker.
Okay.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
Cool.